The fifth round of the Premier League is upon us, and I'm gonna predict every single game of this game week. Starting off with the Merseyside derby between Liverpool and Everton. Of course, it's gonna be played at Anfield in Liverpool's advantage there, and I just have to predict the Liverpool win. I'm gonna go with a 3-1 win actually, because I don't think they often keep a clean sheet, especially not in the derbies. But I do believe that they have this one in the bag. They're just so much better than Everton, and I mean, their form is sublime, right? Of course, taking home a late win against Atletico Madrid in the Champions League. I mean, Everton haven't been that bad, and especially their attack I've been quite impressed with. Obviously, with Ndiaye, Dewsbury Hall, Grealish now. I think they've looked quite good, but in my opinion, just not close to being good enough to the level of Liverpool. Next up, we have one of the most interesting games of the entire game week, in my opinion. It's Brighton taking on Tottenham at home, and I do have to say that I favor Brighton in this one. I just think that their playing style is really well suited to an opponent like Tottenham. Even though Tottenham are quite a good counter-attacking side, I just think that the quality Brighton have in possession can give Tottenham all kinds of troubles here. And I mean, looking at the form, Brighton's form is quite good. Losing by a goal away to Bournemouth is not that bad, given how good Bournemouth is, and of course Tottenham have lost to them as well. And this win against Manchester City was really, really impressive and showed a lot of character from Brighton there. So I'm gonna predict a 2-1 win for Brighton. Up next, we have Burnley taking on Nottingham Forest at home. And this is actually a really interesting game as well, in my opinion, even though some people would argue that it shouldn't be. But as we all know by now, Nottingham Forest took a loss against Swansea in the League Cup on Wednesday. And sure, you could argue that they weren't giving it their all because it's the Carabao Cup. But I mean, going out against a championship team as a quite good Premier League team is a bit embarrassing. We have to be saying that, I think. And Burnley haven't been as bad as you may have thought going into the season. As I covered previously, they had a very good transfer window. And I mean, this loss against Liverpool in the 95th minute on a handball and a penalty, I mean, that's quite a good result in itself. Obviously, here losing against Manchester United away, that last goal being in stoppage time as well. The 2-0 win against Sunderland was very impressive in my opinion. So all in all, quite a good start in the league for Burnley. I don't really think that they can take a win against Forest, but I wouldn't be surprised at all if this ends up a draw, and I'm gonna predict a 1-1 draw here. We're heading to London for our next game as West Ham United take on Crystal Palace at home. And I think this is a really interesting matchup as well. I feel like I'm repeating myself, but it truly is. Because as we see here, under pressure, Graham Potter could be facing the sack if he loses this derby here, in my opinion. There's been a lot of pressure on him recently, and for good reasons. Losing to Tottenham 3-0 at home isn't anything that the West Ham fan would accept. Sure, this 3-0 win against Forest away was really impressive, but one good result doesn't save an entire season. And I just think that they will struggle against Crystal Palace. A dynamic Crystal Palace. I mean, the only thing going against Palace, in my opinion, is, of course, their injury list here. Adam Wharton being a really important player for them, but also Sar being away. Two huge names there. But I do believe that Crystal Palace has enough, despite those two massive injuries. Um, the record here isn't that good. I mean, they drew, sorry, against Sunderland at home, and I wasn't impressed at all by that performance. But they are the better team, and I just can't pick West Ham in any game of football right now. So I'm gonna go with the 2-0 win to Crystal Palace here. Moving on, we have a bit of a relegation scrap here as Wolves take on Leeds at home. And I mean, how would you predict this one? Wolves having a really tough start to their Premier League season, but losing by one goal away to Newcastle, some people would argue that's not too bad, to be honest. But the big thing being the injury to Jorgen Strand Larsen, who's arguably their best player by quite a bit, right? And I've actually been quite impressed by Leeds in the start of the season here. A 1-0 loss in the last second of the game against Fulham isn't too bad. drawing at home to Newcastle is really good. And of course, they finally lost there, but I mean, it's Arsenal way. Not many teams can go to the Emirates and win. So yeah, really impressed by Leeds at the start of the season. I actually think that they can get something out of this game here, to be honest, even though Wolves are the betting favorites. Leeds away though aren't too too dominant to say the least. But I'm actually gonna go against the odds and put down a 2-1 win to Leeds United. Next up, we have a huge clash between Manchester United and Chelsea, one of the biggest games of the season in the Premier League. Two classic Premier League clubs, two giants going up against each other. But that's not really how it feels at the minute, especially considering the terrible run of form that Manchester United have. And I actually have to say that I do favor Chelsea in this matchup, even though they played on Wednesday and lost away to Bayern Munich. But that's not that bad of a loss. So I do think that Chelsea, all in all, are the better team here, and I expect them to get it done. I mean, Manchester United at Old Trafford, especially against these bigger teams, shouldn't be underestimated because it's just something about those games that get them to the next level compared to when they play the worst teams. So I think that we will see a better performance from Manchester United than last time. But I mean, can it be anything worse than losing 3-0 in a derby? Probably not. My final prediction, however, has to be a 2-0 win to Chelsea, and I think it will be quite comfortable for the Blues. And to finish off the Saturday of Premier League action, we have another London derby. It's Fulham taking on Brentford at home on Craven Cottage. And this is actually a really good matchup. I mean, name wise, it's not in most people's eyes, but these two teams have had quite a good start to the season, both of them. As we covered previously, Fulham beating Leeds in the last second there. Not an impressive win, but a win nonetheless. Of course, they lost against Chelsea in the derby, but what do you expect? I mean, Chelsea at home, they are really, really good. And I think Fulham has looked very, very decent in the start of the season here. Obviously, as I've covered before, they managed to keep almost all of their significant players, which is, of course, a plus. And having the fact to work with them on preseason as well and getting that squad even tighter and better playing together. But Brentford having started off better than I expected as well. Um, really, when you look at it as well, that the fact that they lost Wissa and Embuemo and still have managed to clutch draws against both Aston Villa and Chelsea. So I think we'll see a really entertaining game Saturday night between Fulham and Brentford. I'm tempted to go with the Derby draw here, but I'm actually going to favor Fulham and predict a 2-1 win for Fulham. Our first game of the Sunday is Bournemouth taking on Newcastle at home, and I really think that this can be a show stealer and possibly the best game of the entire weekend. Bournemouth being probably one of the most informed teams in the Premier League right now, having picked up wins against both Brighton and Tottenham. And Newcastle starting off quite decent as well. Nice to see Voltemade taking up a bit of pace now, since entering obviously on deadline day for Newcastle. But we have to mention the fact that both Anthony Gordon is suspended, is one of the things, which is a big loss for Newcastle. But the biggest factor I think here is that Newcastle play Barcelona on the first day and then have to go away to Bournemouth on the Sunday. I just don't think that it bodes well for them at all here. And Bournemouth are the betting favorites, and I do have to say that I agree with the bookies for this one, and I'm going to predict a 2-1 win to Bournemouth on Sunday. The other 3 o'clock kickoff on Sunday is Sunderland taking on Aston Villa, a real classic English game here. Just one that we love to see. Lovely to see Sunderland back in the Premier League, in my opinion. And like I mentioned, just a total classic, this one. Will it be in terms of the result? Not so sure. I think both of these teams are quite desperate for points at this stage of the league. Sunderland having started quite well this season, has to be said, picking up a point obviously last week against Crystal Palace away. Really impressive. Beating Brentford at home. So they actually look like they might be able to stay up this season. Of course, it's early to say that, but they have looked quite impressive. Um, Also, regarding the fact that they are newly promoted. Aston Villa leaving a bit more to ask, obviously. But as I said in my transfer ranking video, the transfer window was really underwhelming for Aston Villa. And I think that's beginning to show by the results. I mean, it's hard to find a good result here at all. Possibly the first game against Newcastle, but that's 5 games back. And I have to say, I favor Sunderland here, even though Aston Villa, judging by the size of the squad and the depth, obviously, of the squad, should be the favorites in most people's eyes, and they are huge betting favorites. I do have to say that I like the chances of Sunderland here. I wouldn't be that surprised if they managed to pick up a win, but I'm going to predict a 2-2 draw here. And lastly, we have our main event of the weekend. It's Arsenal taking on Manchester City at home at the Emirates on the 5:30 game on the Sunday, and I hope that this is going to be as entertaining as it often is when these two clubs meet. But what I do think is that Arsenal will be taking home a victory here. A lot of people will be deceived by Manchester City's impressive 3-0 win game, obviously, in the derby against Manchester United. But we have to remember how poor Manchester United have been, so that's not impressive at all, in my opinion. And Arsenal are going from strength to strength, obviously picking up a win against Bilbao midweek here. Another factor is that City play on the Thursday against Napoli, tough Champions League game. Then they have to do a quick turnaround on the Sunday and play an away game against possibly one of the top two teams of the entire league. And I can't see City claiming a result here at Emirates. I'm gonna go with a 3-1 win for Arsenal, even though they have players like Bukayo Saka and Martin Odegaard out. I just think that they will cruise to a victory here. So a 3-1 win in the biggest game of the entire game week here for Arsenal. So all in all, a really exciting game week coming up this weekend in the Premier League. Obviously, we have the Merseyside derby, the classic between Manchester United and Chelsea, and on the Sunday we have the huge clash between Arsenal and Manchester City. And just keep your eye out for Brighton against Tottenham. I think that will be really entertaining, with both teams having quite poor defenses but really good attacks, so expect a lot of goals there. And I also think that on the Sunday, Bournemouth against Newcastle will be a really good game. So thank you guys for watching, and I catch you guys next week.